Now in a previous video, I showed you how to create an excite drum bus right over here, which turns these drums from this into this. Bringing out the top end by boosting all the top end here and compressing it a lot, really crushing it to contain that top end and then blending it back in with a parallel bus. So check out that video first if you want to learn how to use that technique. Let's turn this off for now as I show you this other trick known as parallel drum compression or New York style compression, which is basically creating a drum bus and crushing it with compression and bringing it back in with a parallel bus, creating a subtle or not so subtle effect. So let's see how to do that. First, I'm going to create a new track. Right here, I'll name it Drum Crush Bus. Then we're going to bus all the drums to this track. So we'll select them all. And before we grab the routing button, let's check our preferences. Control P on the PC, Command comma on the Mac, which opens up our preferences. And we're going to go to the track Send Defaults. And down over here, decides what happens when we create our sends. By default, it's set up to 0 dB and post fader. If you changed it for a different purpose, make sure you change it back to this, as you want to create the same mix we already have on its own separate drum bus. So sending it at 0 and post fader will do that. So now, hold down Shift while selecting all the drums and continue to hold down Shift as you drag the routing button over to here. Notice how the cursor changes to a patch cable, let go, and that created that drum bus with each fader starting at 0 and post fader. So again, we just recreated the same mix, but over here. So if I mute this, the drums sound like this. And if we unmute it and solo it, the drums will sound the same. And if we hear both at the same time, it'll be the same thing, but twice as loud. So we don't want to do that. Let's just solo it and work on the drum bus. We'll go to the effects on it, search in the filter for compressor. Now we could use any compressor you want, but my personal favorite for this is 1175, which comes with Reaper, so I know you have it. Double click it, and it looks like this. We'll start with 4:1 and adjust our threshold to really compress these drums. In fact, we want to over-compress them because we can blend them back in to create a more subtle effect. So don't worry about over-crushing or over-compressing them right now. Let's make the release a lot quicker so we hear more pumping and breathing a lot faster based on the tempo of our drums. Now, although we're getting that overcompression sound, I think the kick is triggering it too much. So let's filter out the low end that's being sent to this bus. We'll add an EQ. We'll use REAPER, and we'll put it before the compressor. We can get rid of all the bands, except for this one, which is a high pass filter. And we'll set it at about 100 Hertz, just to filter out that low end that's over triggering the compressor. Right now it sounds like this. Bring it up to reduce some of that low end. That sounds better right there. And again, don't worry if we're over compressing the sound, as we're going to blend it back in to make it more subtle, or not so subtle if you want. So let's hear it with the rest of the drums. Let's open the mixer. Here's our drums, and here is the drum crush bus. Unsolo it and bring it down and blend it in to taste. Now I'm noticing it still sounds a bit subtle, so let's go back to the routing on this bus. Let's solo it first, open the routing, and let's readjust our mix going to this bus. I'm going to bring down the kick a bit more. And bring up the room mics to make it sound more ambient or more roomy. And now we can readjust our compressor right here. Notice how much more roomy it sounds as we adjusted that mix. So now it's blended in again. Obviously, it's a bit louder, but you can also tell it's much more live and more compressed. But because we compressed it in parallel, it didn't remove the transients or the attacks from the rest of the drums. They're still there. We're just blending in how much sustain or live sound or ambience is being used. And again, it's being controlled with the compression. And finally, we could bring back in our Excite drum mix. Now let's hear the whole song together.
Easy rider on the highway, station wagon going slow, windows open, you are basking.
I think that sounds more lively and also more controlled in the mix, as you could bring up the room mics or the compression of the overall kit from here and the top end from the Excite bus we created in the previous video. So that's pretty much it. That's parallel drum compression or New York style compression in Reaper. I hope you learned something, hope you can use it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.
Bingo, boys, let's go.